It is really quite an honor to be with you guys today. I found myself a bit more nervous than I tend to do. I speak a lot, but I was really nervous. I think it was just because I was kind of, for the first time, sharing my story amongst my peers, and not just the Kate's Club story, but the Choose ATL story. And I was talking to my brother last night, and I always kind of give him a call before I do speaking engagements, because he always says the same thing. He says, look, at the end of the day, whether you do well or whether you don't, everybody's going to come up to you afterwards and say you did a good job. So does it really matter? So I appreciated that perspective, but I'm excited to just spend some time with you guys today to share my personal journey and why I'm here before you as the executive director of Choose ATL. It's certainly a story that I don't think I ever imagined for myself, in a path I could have never really dreamed up early on. This is me. My story starts when I was 12 years old. As you can see, I quite hadn't hit the height thing yet, but there's a day when I was 12 years old that I remember as if it was yesterday, and that was April 25th, 1991, in Miss Kerwich's 7th grade social studies class. And I was doing a partner exercise with my friend Kyle when I got called over the intercom to come down to the office with my bags ready to go. Now, never a good moment when you're in middle school and you get called down to the office, but this was a particular moment that I knew would change my life forever. And I stood there frozen because I knew that the next step I took was a step into a world that I could have never imagined for myself. And that was a world where my mom, Audrey, had died. When you're 12 years old, you really have one mission in life, and that is to be as normal and as cool as everyone else. Now, within the span of 30 seconds, I went from this little girl to the girl whose mom had died. This is one of our last family photos. My mom was actually really sick for most of my childhood, but I never imagined there would be a moment where she wouldn't be there to raise me. I mean, whose mom dies? I was 12 years old and I was walking a path in life that not only did I not know how to navigate, but I knew no one else to help me along the way. Ironically, we grow up with fairy tale princesses who all had what? Their moms who had died. But I realized very quickly that they were not going to be able to help me at that time. I was very alone, and that perception that I started to build would ultimately determine my life for the next several years. That word perception, I want you to hold on to that word for today. Such a powerful word. To me, perception is a limiting sightline of reality that can control your entire trajectory in life if you let it. After my mom died, I would spend the next 7 years in this dance around perception, this limited, narrow world of asking, why me? How could this be? And whose mom dies? I saw the perceptions that I was building as the key to my survival, both a tool to limit my own understanding of life after trauma, which kept me safe, and also as a tool to limit the outside world, which kept me safe. And this would have been my path if it wasn't for a chance meeting when I was 19 years old. As a third year at the University of Virginia, I was doing kind of the normal routine of trying to find a volunteer project for the summer. I knew I had to start to build this thing called a resume. And when I was flipping through opportunities to volunteer, I came across this camp. And the camp was for kids who had lost a parent. Well, I had never heard of such a thing. Remember, I'm in this zone, this world of I'm alone, this whose mom dies. So out of curiosity, I decided to sign up for this camp. And when I arrived at the camp director approached me and asked me to open camp with my story. Now, I hadn't talked about my mom in 7 years, not even to my best friends. And suddenly, I was on stage in front of 200 young people sharing my story. That moment on that stage took me to a place beyond a feeling I had ever experienced since my mom had died. I really can't recall if I spoke for 5 minutes or 50 minutes, but I got it all out. And to this day, it was one of the most freeing moments of my life. It was a weight off of my spirit, a voice found that had been buried in silence, riddled with limiting perceptions for most of my adolescence. I walked off that stage refreshed, like a typical 19-year-old, like, I got this world all figured out. It was really empowered, it was really free, but I was still walking around as if this whole thing was just about me. Later that night, I would find myself brushing my teeth, still on a bit of a high, when I had a tap on my shoulder. It was this little girl, Anya. This is her. Anya approached me and asked if I was Kate, to which I kindly replied yes. So she, familiar, went about telling her story. I was so taken back by how kind of comfortable she already was in sharing that she had lost her mom and her dad. They had died in a car accident. But she was excited to be at camp, and she was excited to meet me. Oh, and I should meet her brother and her sister as well. Now, maybe it was because she had heard my story that she felt she could share hers. But what happened in that moment that I recognized was that her sightline at 10 years old was way better than mine when my mom had died. Wow. And what Anya hadn't realized was that though she was changing her perception of her own loss, she was also changing mine. Suddenly, in that moment, my mind went from shifting to why me to who can this help? That moment changed my life. I was finally able to break through my own limitations and false perceptions to move beyond what was my own grief to a purpose bigger than myself. I didn't know quite yet how that would be applied, but 4 years later, it became very clear. In 2003, after moving to Atlanta to pursue a career in sports, I quickly pivoted to create Kate's Club. Kate's Club started with 6 kids and 6 adults. I love this picture because you can't even tell who the kids are or who the adults are. I would drive around town. I mean, literally, we almost had a slide that had a van on it, but we felt that may creep people out. But I literally drove around town, 22, 23 years old, picking up kids. I know, see, it gets creepy. And let me tell you, these parents, it really was the power of my story that was the only currency I needed for these parents to give me their kids, because they too thought that they were alone. But I would drive around town, and very intentionally, I would drive from Bankhead to Buckhead to Douglasville to Decatur, because I knew one of the limiting perceptions we all had about the premature loss of a parent was around boundaries and socio-boundaries. And I had come to find that actually, while I thought I was alone and while I thought that grief was a thing that isolated us, what we really had an opportunity to do was to show how it is actually one thing that will unite us all. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what your race is or your socioeconomic situation. It doesn't even matter what your faith is. All of us have, all communities can have loss of a parent. And I wanted to really, really, from the beginning, help people see that this was an opportunity. I actually remember walking into one of the families, because all I had was this van, so I'd have to go and meet these families at coffee shops. And I walked in, and it was these 3 young sisters, and the youngest sister looks at her other sister, and she goes, "She doesn't look like what I thought she'd look like." So me being, a spry 23-year-old said, "Well, what did you think I would look like?" And she said, "I thought you'd be old and wearing black." Now, I had to say, that's very profound for a young 9-year-old, but that was her perception. And I very quickly shared with her that that's not what Kate's Club was about. That Kate's Club was about all of our friends who are young just like us and are still in search of all the color that is in our life, all of the things that we still have to hope for and to dream for. And that's Kate's Club. This is Kate's Club today. Well, this is just Kate's Club's camp, I should say. Today, Kate's Club serves over 1,000 kids annually, and a lot more through our trainings with teachers and guidance counselors. We have a wonderful clubhouse facility in Atlanta, and tomorrow I get to head out to not one, but the first of 2 camps that we will hold this year for our kids. This was our last camp out at Camp Twin Lakes. The vision of Kate's Club is to build a world where it is okay to grieve. A world where it is okay to grieve. Think about where your mind takes you when I say that. What does that even mean? Well, to me, it means that we go beyond just the limited understanding that grief is isolating and that it has a timeline. One of the hardest things for me when I was growing up was finding ways to be emotional and grieve for my mother when the world around me thought that I should have been over it and done with it. And according to the world, probably done with it in 6 weeks. It means we go beyond the aspiration of building just a place where sadness is accepted and shame averted, but to a world where we see our losses as areas in our life for gifts to emerge and growth to occur. To me, that is a world where it's okay to grieve. And it absolutely means that no child should grieve alone. I'd say this was a far charge from where I started my own grief journey. One of the biggest compliments I ever received from Kate's Club was from a young girl who explained the organization in this way. "I feel like when my dad died, half of my heart was taken, but Kate's Club was the ambulance that repaired it and gave me an even bigger heart to hold." What this young girl so poignantly shares with us is that because of her grief and because of Kate's Club, she has even more love to give to the world. She has been met with gifts of compassion and empathy, things that we learn when we face our grief together. These are the gifts and the growth that not only change our own lives, but the lives of everyone we touch. That's a world I want to live in. And that's how powerful grief is, if you choose to see it that way. And while this world right now may be just as big as the reach of Kate's Club, I look around and know we are making such progress in breaking perceptions and going beyond the current acceptance of grief support. If you noticed, grief is popping up a lot lately. And it's in large part because public figures such as Sheryl Sandberg are sharing their story. 10 years ago, I could have never have imagined the cover of Time magazine with the title, "Let's Talk About Grief." Yes, let's talk about grief. It's the only thing I've ever wanted this world to do. Well, maybe not the only thing. See, as of 18 months ago, I got a new little passion, a new little mission to make sure the world is also talking about something else. I really am so honored every day that I get to wake up and serve in the role of Executive Director for Choose ATL. This is an initiative that is designed to really go out and share Atlanta's story, to talk about our talent and our quality of life, the culture that we have come to love in our hometown, and as well as the innovation that is shaping the next generation. My work with Choose ATL continues to build on my purpose to foster opportunities beyond the current state of perceptions into new realms of possibility, whether that is around grief or now our beloved Atlanta. When I was considering this role, it actually seemed to be a bit of a deviation of where I was going in my career. I mean, it started a nonprofit. I went on, had a short tenure at a corporate foundation, and then Choose ATL? Didn't really know how that fit. But then it all came back to that 19-year-old in me. This moment wasn't about me. It was much bigger. And suddenly I found myself again on the front doorstep of exploring and understanding perception. It has been some of the most fascinating months of my entire life. And I'm here to tell you that the world is watching. The world is excited about Atlanta, and it is our time. And if you didn't think that the world was watching, they certainly were after January 8th. I so love that clip. I remember, I don't watch too much TV, and I think it was a Sunday night, and so I had the Golden Globes on, and this was one of the earlier awards, and I was like, oh my gosh, Atlanta. And then Donald Glover and the show ends up winning, and I was like, this is gonna be a really interesting year for Atlanta. I was like, only aside from the Migos, is this gonna really make this year different? I had a whole plan for this year, but now the world is watching. And if you recall, this was followed up with our beloved Falcons making it to the Super Bowl. So we had a very, very busy quarter. But I also show this because, yeah, I probably will never win a Golden Globe, but I really have Atlanta to thank too for my dream. You know, I started Caves Club 14 years ago. I didn't know anybody in Atlanta. I grew up in Virginia. I didn't have any money. I had a bar night. I call that the original crowdfunding platform. $20 at the door, you get a drink, and we raised $1,200 in one bar night, and that's Caves Club that you just saw today. I didn't even have academic licensure. I mean, there was no reason for this to work. But it worked because it was Atlanta. It worked because this community surrounded this mission and this vision and delivered Caves Club to the kids who need it. And for that, I'm just forever grateful. But now I had this opportunity to lead another movement, and that is this movement for Atlanta. And I have my gift from Atlanta. This is the opportunity for me to help everybody else share their story. See, this movement about Atlanta and what we want Atlanta to be isn't about me. It's really not even about you all. Sorry. But it does take you all, because this movement is about the opportunity to build a city and a home for the next generation that we would all be a proud part of building. Perhaps me sharing my story today will empower you all to share yours. Why do you choose Atlanta? And are you ready to take the microphone and the stage to share those reasons? For so long, we have been one of the world's best kept secrets. Now is the time to realize our purpose. Now's the time to shatter expectations and dated perceptions, to show the world how the people and the places here are making an impact. Why is this so important? It's important because a city that is intentional about its growth is the city that will shape the world for the next generation. And I just don't see any other region stepping up. Everyone is watching Atlanta, and I'll tell you why. Because everyone around the world is looking for creativity that has impact and meaning. That's Atlanta. Everyone is looking for innovation that is attached with the aspiration to equality. That's Atlanta. And everybody is looking for hustle that is met with hospitality and generosity. That's Atlanta. I challenge you all to be humble no more. Let's brag about all the beauty that exists in Atlanta. Let's showcase our raw edges in need of honing. But let's do it in the way that is true to Atlanta. Let's do it with the spirit of collaboration, inclusion, and originality. No, as this mural shows, Atlanta is not perfect. But how rarely do we get an opportunity to be intentional about redefining who we want to be, both around our imperfections and our aspirations? What is the world that we wish to see in which Atlanta is a shining star, a beacon of opportunity, the heartbeat of the next generation of creativity and culture that influences the world? This is not out of our reach. People are watching and expecting us to step up. It is our time that we must declare it. We must own it. We must own, first, pushing back our own sightline that holds us back from being a leader around the world. And we must push back on the perceptions that are made for us. Let's define our own purpose in the world. As I took this job, I started out with this thinking of, gosh, we really need to have a video, something like a sizzle, something really exciting that we can put out to the world that shares Atlanta's story. And if we can get that in 90 seconds, that'll be amazing. So we went out and we charged a few teams to put together that sizzle. And as you can imagine, what we got back was very different. Each piece of work was very different, all together demonstrating the kaleidoscope of culture and point of view and creativity that we have here in Atlanta. And of course we were going to see that. So we quickly decided that we weren't going to get into the business of producing content. We already had the creatives that could do that. We just wanted to become the content amplifiers. So many of you are already creating the content. We felt it was our job to build the platform that allowed you to showcase that. So that is why we decided to go big and beyond. And I'm really, really excited to be able to share with you guys. You guys are some of the first people to hear this news, that later this year, we will not just put out one piece of content, but we will launch an entire over-the-top video streaming network that is only for Atlanta-made content. This will be the first ever move by a city to create a digital showcase of its own content, whether it's the behind the scenes of the industry leading the charge of innovation, or the burgeoning entertainment that is tethered back to our hometown, or the culture that we know is uniquely influencing the world. So think kind of YouTube meets Netflix, but it's all Atlanta content. This network is the opportunity for our creative community to come to life for all the world to access and to be inspired, to go beyond the perceptions we set for ourselves or we allow the world to set for us. It is now about to be delivered in the most innovative way. Take a look. very exciting. It's very bold, too. But we're going to go for it. Now is our time. And now's our time to not be humble in what we're doing and what we're experiencing here in Atlanta. Now, if you notice one thing is missing from that clip, we don't have a name yet. So guess what we're going to do today? We're going to give you guys the opportunity to help us select that name. We have 5 finalists of what we want to name our platform. So everybody take out their phone. Take out their phone. This is your first step in getting involved in the movement. So to cast your vote, it says on the bottom, you text choose followed by the preferred name of these 5 to 797979. Now we brought you 5. We knew we needed to give you some direction in what we named it. We were really excited about all of these opportunities. But we also know there may be some of you in there that have your own ideas. So if perhaps you go away and you have a spark of inspiration and you have a name that you want to suggest, you can also send us an email at info@chooseatl.com. So go ahead and text. Now's your chance. Don't think about it too much. And you still want more time? Okay. We have more time, right, Blake? We can get this up while that's all I have. That's my show.
Thanks. Hello. Thanks, Kate. Hey, we're going to do a Q&A, so don't run away just yet. And also, before we do Q&A, Foundry 45, Scott and Dave. Everyone say, hey, Scott, Dave. There's Scott, there's Dave. They helped us with the virtual reality thing. Go to foundry45.com, check them out. If you have questions, raise your hand for Kate. I'll run a mic over here. Molly will run a mic over there, and we'll have a conversation. And you can still vote if you want.
Yes. Yes. There we go. Do I lead this? Oh. Okay.
Yeah, if you have questions, just raise your hand.
Hi. Okay. So right now, in addition to this, Choose ATL is a beacon for attracting talent. What do you guys do or are doing to make sure that you're showcasing diverse opportunities and including diverse perspectives? Specifically people with disabilities that usually are perceived as not needing or wanting access to places of culture in the cities they live in.
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say from day one, we've been very intentional about creating this inclusive movement, right? I mean, that's why this is not, we have a small team. This is not about this team taking on the role of just being the storytellers. It's about giving it to the community. So we have different ways. We have a wonderful catalog that we're building of just video profiles and testimony. And I think one of the most powerful things when you're out there trying to not tell, but share the story of Atlanta, that self-actualization moment is critical. So it really takes all of us who see ourselves as diverse and unique to really step up and say, okay, I will share my story so that others can see that this is a place that has perspective and inclusion. That's what I'm excited to do, I mean, and I think we just need more people out there that will step up and share their story.
Question over here.
And we aren't limiting our thought in that, so we hope the community isn't either, for sure.
So mine was similar to that. How are you going to be choosing your content, accepting your content? Are you? Anyway, I have ideas, so I want to share.
Yeah, fantastic. So if you go to chooseatl.com and you go to /network, there's a form you can fill out. if you want to reach out about your ideas, if you are a content creator and you want to be a part of the network. We will be obviously heavily curating this, especially in the early days. I mean, the vision is, this thing, gets really big and bigger each day. The first, when we go to launch, we'll be very intentional about the diversity of that content, as well as the quality of that content, and we'll go from there. But I think the quickest answer is check out the website, reach out to us. We're in this phase right now where we're clearly making big decisions about the brand and how this thing will show up in the marketplace, but it's also about getting this, our own community to really own this and be a part of this, so.
Okay, great, I have one over here.
First of all, thank you so much for your profound insight about Atlanta's growing community and everything. But then I also have very curious about your thought on gentrification of Atlanta, because that's one of many things that my fellow Atlanta friends are concerned about, because of the newcomers in the city. The place is getting more and more expensive, and it's kind of driving those current residents out. So I was kind of wondering what your thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the growth is inevitable, and I think that always comes with some pain points. But what I'm really encouraged by is the fact that everybody's already got their eyes open to it. I think we can study other cities that have had fast growth, and their strategy of just focusing on high growth, high wage jobs is now showing their bottom falling out, right? And so I can tell you, being a part, especially the bigger kind of Metro Atlanta chamber, where those conversations are happening on a high level, I also can see the undercurrent of the young people demanding that this conversation happen. We're not perfect, and I certainly can't stand before you and say we have a perfect solution to it, but we all have to stay aware of that and keep pressing on that. The West Side, there's so many great things, developments that are happening where that's just at least conscious in the mind of the growth. And to me, that's just an encouraging first step.
Good morning. I'm also from Virginia, so it's cool to be in Atlanta and see somebody who's come and accepted a city. I travel a lot. One of the questions I had was, you mentioned live streaming, and I know this kind of gets back to the content question, but as you look at Facebook and their live streaming and some of the ethical issues they're facing right now, how do you plan to monitor how people utilize that?
Yeah, so this is video streaming, so we may get to a phase where we have live streaming, and I think we'll make sure that we're set up for success. Obviously, we're allowing Facebook to lead so we can learn a little bit from them. But so this will be content that's already kind of, pre-produced and, put out there, at least in the first phase. Hi.
Okay, here you go.
So when you were starting Kate's Club, you mentioned not having a big support system in Atlanta. What things did you do to help yourself stay strong before you had a big, solid support group to help you?
Yeah, well, I had, obviously your friends. I mean, my first board was like my roommates. That's how that works. So, it's really interesting because I was kind of this young person who had this idea, and I always like to tell this story. This was before starting nonprofits was kind of the thing to do. I didn't really know a lot of people. There wasn't these networks, CCI didn't exist. There weren't these wonderful communities that there are now to support social entrepreneurs. So I had to rely a lot on just a mentor base that was always willing to just bring me into the room. I kind of always joked the three biggest fears in life are public speaking, death, and fundraising. And I was the girl that would show up to speak publicly about death and ask people for money. So I think that kind of made me a bit fearless. But look, I think part of why I tell my story is, it's, obviously my story is about the loss of my mother, but it's really about getting out of your own way, and even when you are faced with what seems to be your biggest breakdown point or your biggest loss or your biggest vulnerability, if you can shift that perspective to be about bigger than yourself, it makes it a lot easier to go out into the world and even help others. I mean, that I think is the big theme of my journey. It wasn't hard for me to go out and build community and support around this because it wasn't about me. I think we limit our perceptions when we make it about ourselves.
Thank you.
Let's give a big round of applause for Kate.